May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Real Gaijin, unveiling the real Japan, an American expat's inside look. Now it's time for another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts. Summarized podcast.
Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone around the world. My name is Mark Kennedy. I'm the host of the Real Gaijin Ask Me Anything AMA podcast and Substack. Today we have yet another special guest, Larry Kieffer, who is actually a longtime friend. Two of our children have been close friends for 15 years or so at this point. So it's a pleasure to welcome him. He is known as the Headhunter Dad, and we're going to learn more about that in just a minute. Larry, you want to say hello?
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure.
And is it your birthday today?
It is not my birthday today. You're looking at my living room wall, which has been a birthday wall for about 6 months now, I think.
Oh,
But
okay. Well,
one of these days we'll have to take it down.
all right. That's great. And so let's just jump right into it. Tell us what you do, who you are. I know you're an executive recruiter. You're also an adjunct professor at Temple University in Tokyo. What is it that you do?
Wow. So that's a very open-ended question. I guess some background on me is probably suitable. So I've been in Japan since '95. So this year will be or in August it was 30 years exactly. Originally from New York, and wanted to find a way to work in Japan. So I got an MBA, came over here with an internship, and got hired almost immediately by a Japanese recruiting firm, which got me into recruiting. So I've been doing recruiting now for the last 30 years, a couple different companies, including my own company for a while, which I then later merged into the current company, Fidel Consulting, where we do IT recruiting. As you mentioned, a couple kids, a boy and a girl. And I also teach for the last 15 years, I think it is, a course at Temple University in Japan on job hunting for undergrads, which has been a very gratifying role to play, and a nice switch from the day in and day out stress of headhunting. And then, as you mentioned, the blog, Headhunter Dad, which also is, I guess, about 10 years old. I forget when I started that, which was an interesting moment because it came about around the same time that I started teaching.
Yeah.
So I'd always been doing the recruiting, and I had two brothers and a sister back in this. Well, they're now both in the States now. One brother's in China now. One of my brothers owns a dance school in New Jersey, an entrepreneur, and he and I get on calls regularly and talk about business and ideas and investing and occasionally kids, because since he teaches kids, he thinks he can advise me on parenting. Um, I guess, again, around the time that I started the blog, prior to that, I think I was sharing some idea about a business. Could have been real estate or semiconductor or something, some brilliant idea that I had. And he made a comment to me. He said, why don't you just focus on something that you know? And there's probably a lot of things that you can do based on the stuff that you know. And it got me to think about what it was that I know and that I'm kind of interested in. And the recruiting side was obviously there. I had already been doing that for 8 or 9 years, I think, at the time. And my son was, I guess, maybe around 5 or so, and that took over a lot of brain space. Having your first kid and thinking about that, and the idea that what can I realized a lot of the stuff that I had been thinking about in terms of parenting and raising him were connected with the recruiting and
Ah,
and he uh, how the things that I did with a 5-year-old might later impact his ability to get a job, his ability to function in a company well, his lifelong success related to, to work.
mm,
And uh, it occurred to me that writing a book or something along those lines would combine those two,
mm,
and thus Headhunter Dad was born.
mm.
Um, and it's been very, very interesting to see uh, how that's developed. I'm every article that I write, uh, it reinforces my belief that there's a lot that we can do early on uh, to help our kids prepare in a positive way, towards um, being able to get those jobs, to being able to get the job they want, to being able to decide on the job they want, uh, to make what might appear as risky decisions with confidence
Yeah.
in the future, and how a lot of it really does come back to uh, the stuff that you're doing with your kids when they're 5 or 6 or 7,
Mm,
and not necessarily uh, college age where you're saying, okay, this is how you write your resume,
mm.
and you have to do this more and you have to act like this more. And um, so it's been fun. It's been really fun, really interesting. Hopefully I've been able to practice what I preach
Well,
with the two of
I
them.
know you. I know you've been successful with the first child, and the other one is now just about ready to go to college. Sounds like. But what about so the primary audience of the Headhunter Dad newsletter blog would be parents or actual students?
So parents,
Okay.
definitely parents.
Mm,
I've had so it's on LinkedIn. My connections are there, and so I teach at Temple. I teach 3 semesters, so spring, summer, and fall. So I get about 20. Right now, I have 38 students, but say 20 to 30 students per semester. And
mhm.
one of the requirements for them in the class is they have to create a LinkedIn profile if they don't have one,
Yes.
and they have to connect with me.
Mm.
So many of them end up seeing my blog, and
Ah,
so I've had them comment on it and mention it to me and say, yeah, we I saw your blog, it was pretty cool, that kind of stuff. So it's not bad. It's ideas, but so it's never too late,
mm,
right, to make changes. It's never too late to work on yourself and uh, to develop. But um, the blog itself is a bit more focused on, as a parent, how you can help your kids uh, to be better prepared for an uncertain future,
yeah.
and and not so much, you really need to teach your kids programming, not that kind of thing, but the kind of things that I have seen as a recruiter lacking
Mm.
in candidates that I come across.
Ah, for
And
instance, what, for example?
well, well, let me add a little bit to that. So there's things that are lacking, and then there are things that I see time and again, hiring managers uh, making hiring decisions on that are not technical requirement based. And these are the kind of things that will help your child as a grown up, regardless of what they want to do, regardless of what direction to go, regardless of, what skills they may or may not have. So, for example, confidence.
Mm.
Confidence is a huge one. I'm sure, Mark, that you have hired many people over your
Yeah.
executive years, and it's night and day when somebody walks into your office with real confidence in their
Absolutely.
capabilities.
Mm.
And I have seen time and again that the managers will choose that candidate with that high level of confidence over the candidate who might have a slightly better technical background
Sure.
or a few more
So,
years of experience. Um, and that's a huge thing as a job hunter, and it's not something that you can turn on and off, and it's hard to fake, you know.
absolutely. Yeah, raw
Uh,
talent. You can't fake that. So, that's fascinating. I'm kind of assuming that the readership is literally global at this point. It's not limited to people in Japan, correct?
so correct. Well, if you include my dad, um, but yeah, it's. I haven't actually really dove deep into who's connected. LinkedIn newsletter has been pretty good at spreading the word.
Mhm.
Being a recruiter, I have a lot of connections on LinkedIn, so uh,
Mm.
if I post something there, it tends to get spread out
Mm.
quite a bit. Um, 2016, when I moved into Fidel, we have an India office, and my involvement with India shot straight up. And there's 1.4 billion potential readers,
Ah,
there suddenly as a potential market. So yeah, it's gone up a bit. I think the biggest challenge these days is really just finding time to create content.
yeah.
I think now uh, maybe I have 170, 180 articles, something like that. But the I think I have more than that sitting in the draft folder.
Um, uh,
uh, ideas that come up that need to be these days, things like these 10 jobs uh, will no longer be around thanks to
yeah,
AI,
yeah.
stuff like that.
Hot
And that
topic.
so the which is a great lead for an article that you
Mhm.
write. Okay, so you've got a 10-year-old uh, who is 11 years from writing a resume,
Mm.
and there may not be any jobs in 11. Elon Musk just came out saying there's not going to be any jobs. AI is going to do everything, and
Mm.
we're all just going to sit at home and play video games. So, what do you do, and how do you prepare your kids? Do you insist they become a scientist? Do you tell them they have to do sales? What are the do you teach them how to make a great cappuccino? There are a lot of questions, and the the worry as a new parent um, is hard. It's really hard.
Mhm.
It's hard to, and you don't feel like, at least I didn't feel like the other parents understood. What
Ah,
what you're dealing with as a first parent feels unique. It
ah,
feels like you're the only one who's ever gone through all of this, and um, which is obviously ridiculous, but it's, that's your first kid. Everything is new, and the manuals,
yeah.
um, your first baby, all these other manuals out there, they're nice, but they're not, you know, you need the AI. You need the AI nanny, in your ear daily, just saying,
That's
"Do
you.
this. Yeah, do this, take care of your kids this way. Yes, you can give them a piece of chocolate today. No, you cannot give them a piece of chocolate tomorrow." All these little questions that you deal with as a new parent. So, it was let me know if I'm talking too much, but as I as I started writing this blog, it was turned very quickly into a two things. One is I wanted to share these ideas
Mhm.
with parents who might not be thinking them and might be, wondering about certain ways of dealing with their kids and so on like that. So I wanted to share my thoughts on that as a recruiter and a new father. But it was also a very therapeutic way of working through
Ah,
some of these ideas.
sure.
Um, again, to the confidence one is a big one, I think. And in order to write, and I think there's several articles related to confidence, but in order to write those articles, I had to research.
Mm.
How do you instill confidence in your kids? How do you raise a child who is not afraid to try something new and to take on a challenge? Like Branson's famous quote is, if somebody offers you a job you can't do, take it and figure it out.
Mm.
So how do you get a kid who's confident enough to say yes to that?
Mm.
Um, and it was fascinating. It's really interesting stuff. There's so much out there on it.
Mhm.
So kind of bringing that together and trying wherever I could to do it with my own kids uh, was great. It was a great exercise, and like I said, I hope hopefully uh, there's been some success with it. Um, you
Well,
know,
I know there is since you invited me to be a guest speaker in your class once, so I saw that in action. Now, I'm curious. Well, first of all, we have a number of people that have tuned in, so thank you for joining us. This is a Ask Me Anything live chat. So please, if you have any questions for Larry, put them in the chat, and we will do our best to monitor that and ask for you. And we don't have to mention your name. You can do this anonymously. So I'm curious. That's fascinating that this is the Headhunter Dad is positioned essentially for a global audience. To what extent, though, do you try to weave in your long experience in Japan into this blog?
um, somewhat. It's not. The purpose of the blog again is to help parents understand what they might do with their toddlers um, to help them become uh, more employable, I guess is one way of thinking about it in the future.
Long term.
Yeah. And I think there's some universal aspects to that. The Japanese part of it is only as it relates to how I might be able to use something from Japan to explain a point.
Ah,
And so one example is kukyo-yomu, the read the air
mm,
uh, phrase in Japanese, where you have to kind of understand the room, feel the, whatever tensions are there, and without getting a verbal confirmation of what's going on. And that's a skill, and
mhm,
it's a skill that is valuable globally.
yeah,
I would argue, and so can you teach a high schooler that? Can you teach a college student that prior to getting into the workforce? Um, Probably not so well, And so, how do you teach your kids that in a way that so now we're getting into something else. So there are negatives to that as well. The read the air aspect of Japan tends to combine with the meiwaku, the never bother somebody
yeah,
thing. So a lot of times what I've seen is that somebody will judge based on what they're feeling is the environment. They'll judge that this is a situation where I should not speak up,
uh,
for example. because if I speak up, it might, not for sure, it might create a problem.
Mhm.
And that, if that's the real case, great. If that's legitimate. But I feel that in Japan, you tend to err on the not creating a problem, the avoiding disharmony side
Yeah.
of it. And I think globally, as an employee, whether you're in Japan or not, sometimes you gotta, shake things up a bit. Sometimes you have to stand up and say something. And how do you balance that? How do you teach your kids how to read the room, but also give them the confidence in themselves and the judgment to say, no, I'm still going to say something. I'm still going
Mhm.
to speak up and talk about it. Um, so back to the original question, things like that, I will bring up uh, about the Japan experience.
And what kind of questions do you field from your audience? I mean, most commonly.
I'll give you one example. It was a very interesting conversation because I started off before my daughter was born. So a lot of my thinking was on, you know, uh, a boy growing up to be a
Ah,
man in, uh, essentially, a man's world is, it's still very much uh, male dominated, unfortunately. So when I had a daughter, a lot of the thoughts you started, there was this shift there. It's
mm,
okay. Is there why do I have to give her different advice? Why do I have to
mm,
tell her something else different from my son? And there was one article I wrote about um, the disparity in the workplace and how you might have to prepare your daughter for that
mm,
um, to uh, to help her make her way in a environment that might not be fair to her.
mm,
And I got a response. I got somebody commented on it. This is on LinkedIn about how rather than changing your daughter, why not change the way the environment is? Why not change
mm,
society and so on like that? And I agree. That's and the discussion we went back and forth a few times, and it was essentially my response was, "Great, yes, that would be awesome. I'd love if I could do that. I don't know how to do that, and if it takes my daughter's lifetime for that to be resolved, I don't want her to miss out on a fruitful career and reaching the heights that she can reach because she didn't adjust herself in some way to make the most of a difficult situation. Um, and I still think about that sometimes, is because it is hard. You don't want to tell your kids that they have to be something different than who they feel they are. I think the example in that particular article was that you know, women need to be more aggressive.
mm,
And it was I think there was an article about that I commented on and then wrote my own article on. Um, and then we talked about how can you get your daughters, to be more proactive and outspoken,
mm,
as kids. Because I think there is certainly in Japan, I see it, there is a tendency to shush the kids and to certainly girls are looked at differently than the boys by a lot of families. So how do you encourage them to be more um, natural in how they want to be, and so on like that. But it was a thought-provoking response for me, um,
Mm.
as one of the comments.
Now, you've been writing the Headhunter Dad for, what, 15 years at this point. Uh, I mean, gender-specific advice, for example, could be one option, but how has your thinking or advice changed over this period? I mean, the world's changing. That's kind of a long time. Perhaps some of the advice is
Mm.
changing.
Um, I'm I've actually recently started rereading
Mm,
and sort of reposting some of the older ones and editing uh, some of the thoughts. Not a lot. I haven't,
okay.
mainly because I think I haven't really uh, sort of focused on skill sets or things like that.
Mm,
Like I said, I don't say teach kids programming or
yeah,
dive into those things. How has it changed? Probably not. I don't think the basic ideas. There was one article I wrote where I had done some research on new grad job descriptions
mm,
from top companies. And I collected a whole bunch of them, and I went through looking for similarities. And uh, then I wrote about sort of like the top three, and I don't think those have really changed so much.
mm,
Uh, so communication is a constant uh, for most job descriptions, and very much so for new graduates. The problem solving is another big one that you see over and over again,
mm,
and teamwork, I think, is probably number three. And I I'm still recruiting every single day, and I'm not seeing any major change in those three requirements. Regardless of what you're doing, you need to be able to work with other people. You need to be able to communicate with other people. And if something comes up that stops you from working, you need to figure out how to fix it so that you can continue working.
yeah,
Uh,
mm,
those, no matter whether you're like I was joking earlier, making coffee as a barista, or programming AI, related software. Either way, you got to have those things. Um, so that I don't think has changed much.
okay.
So how do you?
So, mhm. There's been a lot in the news lately, and I'm hearing it from people that are in the situation. New graduates today are apparently facing some pretty hefty headwinds in terms of getting that first job. And maybe it's due to AI, or maybe it's due to all sorts of other factors. But what's it like out there for new graduates?
So uh, I have my disclaimer before I answer this. Uh,
Okay.
my recruiting experience is mainly mid-career,
Ah, okay.
and it is mainly Japan. With that said, I am dealing with students on every semester, so I do see that, and I am exposed to a lot of HR and interacting with companies, and discussions do come up. While I may not be introducing new grads, I am aware of the situation. So I will give my opinion, but I'm not a campus hiring. I'm not focused on that as a professional. Um, and I'll tell you what I tell the students these days. Uh, there are a couple aspects of that. One, and I'll use two companies to give you an example. Let's say the U.S. Okay. Um, let's say Google and Caterpillar. So Caterpillar makes bulldozers,
Mhm.
right? And Google is Google. Um, Big news comes up. Google is gonna hire 30% fewer programmers because AI is going to do it, right?
Mhm.
So where are all those kids who are graduating as programmers going to go? And the big news, oh, Facebook is reducing and Netflix is not hiring and so on. But Caterpillar is hiring in Indiana. And they're going to pay you a third of what Google would have paid you.
Mhm.
But they need a developer.
Mhm.
They absolutely need one. There's no question about that. But all these kids want to work for Google,
Mhm.
and they want to work in California. They don't want to work in Indiana. And I think that there are still jobs out there, and not the coffee shop jobs. These are actual jobs doing what you studied. I think the jobs are there, but uh, the flexibility on the student's part has to be there.
Mhm.
And I think they're missing out on opportunities because of that.
Mhm.
And a lot of the I think if you look at the stats, and I haven't looked at them recently, but I think if you looked at the stats, there's still more demand for technical people than there is supply.
Ah,
Uh, the big news now out of the States is with Trump's H-1B visa announcement saying, okay, now if you want to bring somebody from overseas, why do you think they're bringing people from overseas? There's not
yes.
enough people. There are not enough people who are doing this. Now, with that said, I do believe that we are entering and I've seen this, it's not my own idea, but we're entering more of a diamond shape uh, company organization structure than a pyramid, where AI is handling a lot of the more basic
Ah,
requirements, and you have to come in at a higher level of skill in
mm,
order to add value to a company. It's not going to be every company, but I think we're going to see that base start to shrink. There was a very interesting article about how this is happening in with doctors and surgeons. In
ah,
that many years back, the new surgeon, the resident, whoever, their job was to actually hands-on assist in the surgery. They would sew things up. They would, basically get their hands dirty. With robotics and
mm,
computers, a lot of that is being automated, is being handled now, and the head surgeon doesn't need
mhm,
that assistance. So these young doctors they're there, but they're not getting any experience. They're just
mm,
watching.
mhm,
Um, right? So that type of thing is there. I think that's going to happen in programming. Um, Anything that AI and automation can do, companies will look to do. It's people are messy. It's easier to deal with a machine than it is to deal with a person. If you're a manager, nobody talks back, nobody asks for a raise, nobody, has a sick day. It's concrete and clear what to do. So there's going to be a shift. So what I tell the students, what I've been telling my students more and more these days is uh, y- you need to be, if there are 100 applicants for the job, you need to be in the top 20%. And you need to, so what I, there's a whole bunch of things tied in with this. So you're familiar with fraud examiners for insurance? So
yeah,
the fraud examiner checks the application to get paid by the customer and decides whether you're making it up or not, right? So years ago, there were thousands of fraud examiners.
mm,
Every piece of paper that came into the insurance company had to be reviewed by a person, and they had to decide whether to push it forward to the next level. There's all sorts of bias with this. Early in the morning, they judge differently than late at night. Before lunch, after lunch. If they get into a fight with their spouse before they come in that day, they're less likely to approve anything. So there's all sorts of biases with this, and it's AI is better. It's more consistent, and it's more consistently better, and it catches things. So those 1,000 fraud examiners who work for AIG or MetLife or whatever is now 100 fraud examiners, because that first level of examination is all done by computer, and then the computer flags something and sends it to a person to check the next stage of it. So but there's still 100 fraud examiners. So if you want to be a fraud examiner, great, there's still a job for you. But you need to be good, because MetLife or any of these insurance companies, they're not going to hire the average fraud examiner. They don't need to do that anymore. They only need 100 of you, so they're going to hire the best 100. And that's why I think that going forward, for students, the approach, find something where you are willing to put in the work to be the top 20% in what you do. If you're logging off at 5 and going home to play games or going out with your friends and have no interest in what you're doing 9 to 5, and you're not willing to put a little more into it, you're not going to be top 20%, because somebody else is doing more, guaranteed. And you got to compete, which comes back to another message in my blog, is that, recognize that your kids are going to have to compete. The world is not shrinking in terms of numbers.
Right. That's right.
Very much the opposite. So your kids have to compete. They got to compete. They're going to have to go up against the Harvards and the Yales and the Stanfords and every other college out there. And they're going to have to go up against kids who have worked really, really hard to be good. So find something that you're willing to work hard at, something that excites you enough that you don't need somebody to tell you to do it on a Saturday. You do it on your own. If you find something like that, great, absolutely great. Then you're good. You're solid. You have nothing to worry about. Just follow your interests. But easier said than done, I think.
Well, certainly. That's right. So I'd like to shift gears just for a brief moment to talk about opportunities in Japan. But before we do that, just a quick reminder to everyone who's listening, if you have a question for Larry, put it in the chat, and we will try to keep track of that on our mobile phones here, and we'll read your question for him. So I'm curious, especially since the bulk of what you do from a professional standpoint is focusing on mid-career opportunities, and particularly in Japan. What is the outlook for mid-career opportunities in Japan? I mean, you hear a lot about how Japanese firms don't have enough people. Are there opportunities for foreigners here?
Okay, so your question took a hard right turn there at the end. Are there opportunities for foreigners here? Yes. It's still not easy. Let me talk a little bit about dynamics of the Japan market. So I've always thought of the Japan market as two different markets. There's the Gaishke, which is foreign capital firms, your Microsofts and so on. And then there's the domestic market, which is Fujitsu and NEC. Those markets do not always align, and sometimes one will boom while the other one, does not. The employment market is also different for those two sectors. Generally speaking, in a very general way, the foreign companies, Facebook and so on, when they come to Japan, they are looking to sell to Japan. Their headquarters in the US is creating something that they want to sell to Japanese people. What they do not have when they arrive in Japan is access to the Japanese market, which requires still Japanese language. So foreign companies in Japan, for the most part, and there are all exceptions there, but for the most part, they need access to Japan and they want Japanese speakers to get there. So any bilingual Japanese job seeker will have multiple options in the foreign company side of that market. They may not get exactly what they want. They may, depending on their skills and all that, of course, but there's quite a bit of demand to get there. And there are fewer people. Supply and demand for Japan is a major issue. I think the average age now in Japan is 50. I think I read the other day. India is 29 by the way. So big difference in sort of age there. And even for companies that are not biased about it, it still takes so many people out of the market because they're retired. They're not working anymore anyway. So you have a much smaller pool. You have fewer and fewer kids being born every year. And the bilingual part is still, I think I read somewhere 10% of Japanese are able to function in English. And probably a much smaller percentage who can actively do business in English. So that's the foreign side. For the Japanese companies, they're also selling to Japan. And they have a lot of these Japanese employees who don't speak English. And so there's a concern about cultural fit, and if somebody doesn't speak Japanese well enough, how are they going to interact internally in our organization? So the Japanese side is a big issue, the Japanese language part. Trying to keep my thoughts in order here. So for non-Japanese looking for a job in Japan, I think the opportunity, there's a few. So the traditional response to that is English teacher or recruiter. Are the typical options there, and that still remains the case. The IT industry is different than a lot of other roles because the way I think of it is Java as a programming language is the language no matter what country you're in. There's no Japanese version of Java, there's no English version of Java, there's no Hindi version of Java. Java is written as Java. Fortran, Cobalt, these older languages, they're the language that they are. So if you know that language, then you can do a certain amount of work anywhere in the world. The challenge with that, that's just an example. So for IT, I think there are opportunities because IT tends to be an English-centric kind of business, even in Japan. Even if you're a Japanese company, programmers need to know English to do their job. Even if they couldn't speak to you in English, they know how to handle the IT side of it in English. They know how to read code in English, and so on. So you can have non-Japanese IT positions. The other side of that also is that there are just not enough engineers in Japan. to fill all the IT requirements. So both foreign firms as well as Japanese firms are making compromises
Uh,
on bringing people on who may not be perfectly fluent in Japanese because somebody has to change the light bulb, and you know you got to have somebody do it. And it's okay if they don't speak Japanese completely; they can still change the light bulb. Great, we're good. Let's move forward with our main business. So I do see that, and I think that will continue to develop. Other positions are harder.
mm,
Uh, Sales and marketing, again, is very Japan focused. So unless your company is selling to English speakers, then I think it's tricky to get in without Japanese into those two areas. There are exceptions. I meet people all the time who have built great careers, but I think a lot of them tend to be selling globally
yeah,
uh, and marketing as well. Um, Accounting and HR, outside of the recruiting side, uh, tends to have uh, regulatory issues,
yeah, yeah,
which if you cannot read the
right.
regulations in Japanese, I know you're from medical background, and I'm
Mhm.
sure there were all sorts of regulatory concerns, and Japan is not great about making that available in English.
That's true.
So if you're an accountant uh, and you don't know what the Japanese terms are, you're not going to be as efficient uh, and able to service the companies you're working with. So um, I think those are challenging areas. Logistics and purchasing, logistics maybe,
Mm,
uh, because there's not a lot of client interaction, customer interaction. It's mainly in-house. You're dealing with moving things from one place to another. So there might be opportunities on those sides. But again, you're really looking at starting with the language and saying how important is communication with Japanese people, or whether it's reading, writing, and speaking for this job. And the higher on the scale that you get, then the harder it is for a non-Japanese or
okay,
non-Japanese speaker.
that's clear. So we have a question from a listener. How big an issue is age discrimination in Japan?
Ah, um, not as big as it used to be, I think. I we have uh, we're placing people in their late 60s into positions with our clients. So it's uh, it's absolutely an issue. There's no question that it's an issue, and there's no question that companies are uh, drawing lines at maximum ages. Um, it comes back to supply and demand, I think, in some extent.
Hmm.
Japan is getting older, and if you need somebody who is at a native level in Japanese with a certain skill set, and the only people in the market are over 50, then that's your choice. That's you got to hire. So I think in a way the aging in the society is pushing companies to be more flexible about that, but still very much an issue from companies throughout Japan. The For somebody who's more senior and is struggling with job hunting, it's harder to get a permanent role.
Ah,
Companies are much more strict, and again, the bias is there when it comes to hiring somebody as a seishain, as a permanent employee.
mm,
Um, and there are a bunch of reasons they give. Oh, we're looking long term. We have our rules in our company rules that say we can't do it, and there's all sorts of things there. A lot more flexibility if it's a subcontractor
Mm,
type
that's
position,
interesting.
and that can be long term. We've had subcontractors, 3 4 years in a row continuing on projects and with companies like that.
Good. Well, hopefully that answered the question. Thank you for putting that there. And if anyone else has more questions, please put them in the chat. Say, I have another question. In term, especially compared to the United States, there seems to be a pretty large discrepancy between average wage levels in Japan, which are much lower. To what extent is that thwarting Japan Inc.'s ability to hire top talent?
I would say not so much for most companies, and
Mm,
the language is a big reason for that. Uh, if you're most of the positions available in Japan are positions where they need Japanese speakers, or they believe they need Japanese speakers. So, you may have a brilliant marketing guy sitting in LA, who's making $300,000 a year, and you can't possibly hire him, but you wouldn't even look at him anyway because he doesn't speak any Japanese.
mm,
So there's the the pool of candidates for most of these positions is limited to Japan, and those same candidates, because they don't speak English, do not have opportunities to market themselves anywhere else outside of Japan. So the competition that would normally increase those salaries is limited to this market. So I don't see that holding back most of the companies. Where it is a challenge is for some of the newer technologies, the newer areas.
mm.
We have clients who are hiring AI engineers. They're willing to hire somebody with no Japanese. They're willing, you know,
Oh,
uh, looking for people with PhDs in the subject and things like that. And there are absolutely people that they cannot afford uh,
oh,
based on Japan rates. So there are examples of that, but um, I'm not seeing it uh, beyond a few examples here and there. I
mm,
think companies can have not needed to raise their salaries dramatically uh, in most cases.
okay. All right, that's good perspective. Hey, we have another question in the chat. Oh, what opportunities exist outside of the big cities?
Oh, interesting question. I think there are, well, certainly thanks to COVID,
Mm,
uh, there's a lot more remote uh,
yes.
possibilities. So that's always there. Outside of the big cities, you are going to find an increased demand for the Japanese language
Mm,
because there's going to be less English in
mm,
general in a lot of places you go. Um, if you're looking, big cities typically means Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, Fukuoka,
mhm,
maybe Sapporo. Um, Outside of them, there are absolutely positions. There, Fukui uh, has several large organizations that are hiring. Aomori, uh, Guma. All these locations have companies, and they have jobs that they need to fill, and they're probably desperate for people,
mm,
since the flow of young Japanese tends to be towards Tokyo, towards Osaka, and away from the smaller places. Um, if you do not speak Japanese, the opportunities outside of the big cities. Sorry, if you do not speak Japanese and you're not an IT person, I should say, um, you can still find opportunities outside of the English teacher recruiter job, but it takes some effort. And chances are your resume and following the traditional route of applying through a job board is not going to get you there.
Uh-huh.
These are a lot of the people who see your resume come across the job board and they see Lawrence Kieffer rather than Hiro Tanaka, are going to immediately reject you. Uh, and not because they're racist or it's more of a fear of I don't this is a foreign, I don't know how to deal with this. I think
Uh,
in a lot of those cases, if I contact him and he starts speaking English very quickly to me, I'm not going to know what he says, and then I'm going to be embarrassed.
mm,
So it's easier just to say no. Um,
uh,
so the traditional or the age old approach of networking
mm,
uh, may be what you need to do. How do I find my way into places outside of Tokyo and outside the big cities where I get a job? There are um, non-Japanese everywhere outside of the big cities. I'm sure you see
yeah.
non-Japanese in the areas where you live. Um, Traveling recently with my father when he was here in Japan, we went all over the place and seeing you know non-Japanese faces in all kinds of positions.
Yes.
Um, Convenience stores and driving trucks. At that level, and I'm sure that carries on up into people in different positions. Now, one of the areas that is specifically open to a non-Japanese candidate would be international sales.
Sure.
Um,
Mm,
a Japanese company in Aomori making widgets
mm,
uh, may have a customer in Iowa,
mm,
and having somebody who can interact with that customer in Iowa is a skill they need to add to their organization. Um, those types of opportunities are out there. It takes a little more effort to find them,
mhm,
but a willingness to get out there and to network and to interact and continue working on your Japanese can help you get that. If you are Japanese, then yeah, lots of jobs. I think the traditional approach of just going online to Rikunabi or MyNavi or any of the other job navis that are out
mhm.
there. Yeah, send your resume and follow up.
And back on the question of wages and opportunities, I mean, how about your own? I know you're focused on the middle career positions, but for entry level positions and your own students at Temple University, are they primarily planning to stay in Japan after finding a job, or are they actively interested to move abroad?
It's mixed. It's mixed. Out of some, I'd say more than half
Mm.
are hoping to stay in Japan.
Oh, okay.
I think the um, most of the Japanese students, so it's a mixed of nationalities. So we have Japanese
Mhm.
students and then a variety of foreign students. Um, yeah, more than half are probably hoping to stay in Japan to do something. And the ones salary, I tell them this as well. I said, don't think about salary. Your first job is not about salary. Your first job is about aligning yourself in the role that you want to be in. If you want to go into marketing, then marketing is the job you should take, not, you know, the sales job, even though the sales job pays you more.
Mm,
Take the marketing job, establish yourself as a marketing person, your salary will go up. I guarantee it. You know, be good at what you're doing and focused. So, yeah, they want to stay. I have not seen from my own son's experience with job hunting in Japan and um, hearing about salaries in the market. it does not seem like they have gone up at all for new grads. Probably similar to when I arrived in Japan 30 years ago, to be honest.
Mm. Wow.
3 million yen a year is and less in some cases. So yeah, it's a challenge for young people. Some depends on the industry. I
Yep.
think last year Daiwa Securities announced that they were going to increase their new grad salary across the board to 5 million yen a year.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Mm.
but that doesn't compare in any way to what Morgan Stanley pays
Yeah.
and some of these international firms. Um,
Okay.
so it's
Got it.
yeah, Japan is still working on that.
So we're coming up against the our time limit, but we have another question, so we'll put that out there. For someone who wants to create a tech startup,
Mm.
where are the best areas to set up shop in Japan? And I imagine.
Lot of different sort of depends questions related to that one. So if hiring young Japanese people is going to be a requirement for you to succeed, then Tokyo. There's no other place better than Tokyo for uh, finding young Japanese engineers. So if you're going to need those types of people, if you do not need Japanese and you have you can hire foreigners, you can offshore, things like that, then there are lots of provinces that are
Mhm.
offering subsidies and encouraging businesses to start up, and it's worth looking into that.
Yes.
Uh, because as a startup, you can get money. Rent is cheaper pretty much
Yep.
everywhere else outside of Tokyo. So there's
Mm.
all sorts of things there. Um, the customers that you're planning to sell to, I would imagine you want to be near them
Mm.
as much as possible. You can do a lot remotely, but face to face has some value, especially in Japan. Uh, Pharmaceutical is well known for the Kansai area. Automotive obviously is sort of Nagoya and such. So depending on who you're thinking to sell to, uh, then you might want to consider a location based on that. If it's consumer, and you're not worried about the staffing, then pretty much anywhere, I imagine,
Mm.
uh, would be okay. The yeah, there's a lot of it depends questions that go
Okay.
with that. But Japan is very supportive of new startups.
Yes.
Uh, there's a lot of money available if you do some research to help new startups. Where they fall down is mid range.
Mm.
Um, they're very good at new startups. They're very good at pre-IPO large companies, and that's basically a risk reward issue. New startups are cheap, so there's not much risk. Giant startups are already on track, so there's no risk. Mid-term startups are expensive and risky at the same time. So you'll find a lot of help to get started, but you're going to struggle in the middle to get beyond that sort of mid ground with
Mm.
support in Japan. Um,
Okay.
so if you're going to start something in Japan, you got to have a growth plan that helps you to get past that sort of mid tier part where you're not quite secure enough that Japan Inc. Feels comfortable with you, um, and find a way to get to that next stage.
Got it. All right. Well, Terrific. Larry, we have gone over our time limit, but thank you very much for adding all this information. I mean, the Headhunter Dad, please, everyone who's listening, check it out. Lots of globally applicable advice in there for parents of aspiring job seekers, which is basically everyone. And we'll look forward to checking that out. Also, Larry, you have a new Substack, another channel for distributing the Headhunter
I
Dad
do, I
content.
do. Trying to find the time to create content for it. And if you
Good.
don't mind, let people know Fidel Consulting.
Ah,
Uh,
yeah.
if you got some job hunting questions, fidelconsulting.com. There's all sorts of jobs there, mainly for IT, but we're happy to help out.
Terrific. Absolutely. And I'll put links to all of these resources in the final write-up that accompanies the podcast. So thank you, everyone, for participating. Larry, it's been a pleasure as always. I look forward to meeting you when we're not live in front of the entire world. But you have any final thoughts for everybody?
No, we covered a lot. I think we could probably talk for another hour on this kind of stuff. But no, it's been great. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the
Okay.
invitation.
Thank you. All right, everybody, have a good day. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching and or listening to another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts on Real Gaijin. Tell us what you think and be sure to tune in again next time.